One of the most prevalent themes within the Wano arc has been a theme of identity. It's rampant. You have characters searching for their own identity, adopting new ones, and living in the shadow of someone else's. Momonosuke is probably the clearest example of this, as he fights his way out of not only his father's shadow, but Kaido's as well. Ultimately, he learns to embrace his own name, to be his own man, separating the public view of him as simply Odin's son, and thus evolving into Kozuki Momonosuke. Yamato goes as far as to assume the identity of their father's mortal enemy, if you will. Sanji, trying to escape the Vinsmoke name, not so subtly ends up embracing it, as his goal of creating an entirely new identity backfires when he's only seen as Stealth Black of Germa 66. But there are several examples of this throughout the arc, such as Denjiro, who spends 20 years as Kyoshiro and Ushimitsu Kozo. Hiyori becomes Komurasaki. Okiku is introduced to us as a waitress, but she's really a samurai. Kawamatsu protects the eternal graves in Ringu as Gyukimaru, later to be replaced by Onimaru. Ashura Doji leads his group of bandits under the guise of Shutenmaru. Shimotsuki Yasui flees to Ebisu Town under the name Tonoyasu. The entirety of Ebisu Town have their identities stolen from them by the Smile Fruits. The same happens to Kamazo the Manslayer, also known as Killer. X-Drake infiltrates the Beast Pirates, but is actually a secret marine working with Sword. Perhaps Law as well. The Straw Hats all don new names as they go undercover within Wano. The most meta case of this would be Big Mom, who literally loses her identity and has to fabricate a new one. And last, but certainly not least, you have Kanjuro, who betrays the Scabbards and reveals he's been playing a role the entire time. But there is one outlier to this theme, one person who has been completely true to themselves since their introduction. I believe that this is a sleight of hand by Oda, and that in truth, they are the out-of-wedlock daughter of Shogun Orochi, unaware that their true name is actually KUROZUMI O-Tama. And why do I believe that? Because they both have purple hair. Video's over.
Savage.
I mean, that is a factor, and it is what kind of like sparked everything. But no, there is more to this. There's a lot more to this. Tama has no identity crisis. The closest she comes to it is hiding the fact that she has a power from Hold'em, which is something that Tangiyama Hitetsu ingrained within her to make sure that no one ever finds out about your power. Now, Tangiyama Hitetsu is another person with an identity crisis. He's wearing a mask. He doesn't want to be seen in the capital. You know, when we first meet him, he has an Oda box that says that he's a Kokeshi doll collector, a very random thing to have in the Oda box, a Kokeshi doll collector. And then for Brook to find a collection of Kokeshi dolls in Orochi's castle, but I don't necessarily think that that means that, you know, Tangiyama Hitetsu is some sort of a spy for Orochi. I think that Tangiyama Hitetsu at one time worked for Orochi. I believe that one of the key components of Tama is truly her fruit. And it goes into the mythology that Oda has been peppering throughout the entire arc. There's a story called Momotaro. It's a folklore in Japan. It's about a boy, Peach Boy, who goes to an island called Onigashima with a dog, a baboon, and a pheasant, and feeds them kibidangos to tame them.
Momotaro, the Peach Boy.
桃太郎さん、一体どこへ行きなさる？鬼ヶ島へ鬼退治に参るのだ。お腰につけた袋の中は？日本一のきびだんごだ。これを食べれば100人分の力がつく。一つください。お供します。ありがたい。一緒に鬼を懲らしめよう。
猿はきびだんごをもらって食べ、桃太郎のお供になりました。
桃太郎と犬と猿とキジは船に乗って鬼ヶ島めがけて進んでいった。
Could you get any more obvious, Oda? All you did was gender swap her. She's even on Onigashima right now, with a dog and a baboon. Who will the pheasant be? Will it be Marco? Will it be Tenguyama Hitetsu? Will it be something else? Answer in the comments. It's very possible that we have not seen what the pheasant will be. But there will be some sort of a representation for a pheasant. Could it be Aokiji, which literally translates to blue pheasant, which also, the admirals themselves are a reference to Momotaro, because you have Kizaru, which means yellow monkey. You have Akainu, which means red dog, monkey, pheasant, baboon, either way, monkey and baboon, they're interchangeable. So this isn't the first time that there has been a Momotaro reference. And then there's the story of Kintaro, which is Golden Boy, which is about a young boy living as an orphan in the woods with an old woman that can talk to animals and tames them as well. The physical representation of Kintaro in One Piece is actually Sentomaru. If you look at pictures, they are exactly the same. But I think that Oda is combining Kintaro and Momotaro to create Tama. And there's all of this foreshadowing here. We see right from the beginning, she uses her power, she tames Hihimaru, and Luffy says, wow, that's a really useful power. It's one of the first things he says to Tama. This is a writing technique, because her power is going to be useful later on, and it is. She tames Babanuki, which is the only reason that nobody on Onigashima knew that they were going to raid Onigashima in the first place, because Queen makes a call to Babanuki, and he tells him that everything's fine over there, that Luffy went back into his cage. So Tama has been helpful. Now that she's on Onigashima, she's going to be even more helpful. But there is an emphasis on her power right from when we meet her, because once they see her tame the baboon, it sort of like lights this fire amongst all of the, people that are working for Orochi, a lot of the gifters, some of the headliners, in particular, like, Gazelle Man and Hold'em. It seems like they know about this power. They go after it really hard, more so than just like, oh, this is random. Hold'em asks, like, you ate a real devil fruit, didn't you? What I think is that Orochi was the original owner of this fruit, and that just like he had a fruit in waiting for Kanjuro, and that Higurashi, the old hag, that had a fruit in waiting for him, and she also had the barrier fruit and the clone fruit, that Orochi had Tama's fruit, whether it's called the Tama Tama no Mi or the Suku Suku no Mi. Shout out to Solid, aka Gear Reverse, for that. Suku means attach emotionally. Tama means ball, so these are sort of theories for what Tama's fruit could be. If Orochi knew what the power could do, and that in his mind he felt that it could potentially work on Kaido, in case Kaido ever turned on him, then that fruit would be very important to him. Some people aren't going to like the idea of Tama being able to tame Kaido. We haven't seen this power used on an actual Zoan yet, but I believe that if it can work on the Smiles, that it'll work on Zoans. Because otherwise, why is there so much emphasis and foreshadowing? Everybody's going to say, oh, that's OP and all of this stuff. Well, this is OP. It's One Piece, all right? And there's foreshadowing here. Like, this is... Oda said he didn't know how Luffy was going to beat Kaido. We might be getting ready for, some people will call it a cop-out. I'm going to say it's amazing. Tinfoil time. The basic idea here is that I believe that Orochi, with all of his opulence, with all of his gluttony, with all of the prostitutes and oirans, around him and all of that, he got one of them pregnant. Whether she went off on the run, or she had the child and Tenguyama Hitetsu worked in the castle and tended to the child and then eventually ran off with the child because he didn't want her to be nurtured by Orochi and decided to nurture her elsewhere, or to avoid any sort of like nature claims to the Kurozumis as well. Orochi could have been told that the child died in childbirth or anything like that, while Tenguyama Hitetsu went off and put on a mask and, lived in a forest, and he's been chased around and searched for years because he also maybe stole this fruit that Orochi had and was planning to use on a trustworthy subordinate. Well, now the power surfaces, which Tenguyama Hitetsu tells Tama to never use. Is that why Drake attacked Amigasa village? Because he was looking for Tenguyama Hitetsu, and by way, potentially Tama as well. Yeah, I'm under the belief that Orochi probably doesn't know that Tama exists, or if he did know at one point that she existed, he believes that she is dead, and that the fruit would have been regrown somewhere else, and he's been waiting for someone to eat it, to find it, to then kill them and have the fruit regrow somewhere else, and then give it to somebody that he wants to have it. There's a lot to talk about in terms of the history of the Kurozumi. When you take in, for instance, everything that was told to us by Higurashi, she tells us the story of Orochi's grandfather. How when Odin's grandfather was having a tough time conceiving Sukiyaki, Orochi's grandfather took it upon himself to start offing a lot of these daimyos that were potential successors to the throne. Because if Odin's grandfather couldn't produce a child, then one of them would have to take his place. But here comes Sukiyaki. And then suddenly, everybody catches on to what Orochi's grandfather was doing, and that creates a gigantic massacre of the Kurozumi clan. Now, this is sort of a sins of the father situation. And sins of the father is basically that one person should not be held accountable for the crimes of another, whether that's their father, whether that's their son, whether it's their relative, whatever. But in this particular instance, Orochi's grandfather went on a rampage. So these people went and killed anybody with the Kurozumi name, regardless of who they were or what they had to do with any of this. Kanjuro may have never turned out evil if his parents weren't killed during that kabuki play. This was sins of the father to the absolute extreme. Orochi may not have turned out as evil if all of the stuff with his grandfather didn't happen. These are the brain tease questions, chicken before the egg, time travel type stuff that you could just get lost in, the what ifs. Now this ties into the question of who is Tenguyama Hitetsu. A popular theory is Kozuki Sukiyaki. Yes. Now this would work because we don't really know what happened to Kozuki Sukiyaki. We are told by Orochi that he was poisoned, but Orochi is not a reliable source. In the scene where Odin actually approaches Orochi about that exact thing, he gets no answer on his father's whereabouts. I've always been back and forth with this theory because in the 5 years that Odin was dancing back from his journey, why did he never reach out to his son? Was he hiding in Amigasa village at that time? Had he already assumed the identity of Tenguyama Hitetsu? Where did the wings come from? Well, they're not a smile because he can emote anger. We see that the very first time that he has a conversation with Luffy. He's yelling at him. It could be a Zoan, some sort of a bird type. It could also be part of his Tengu costume. The only way that this theory works for me is if Sukiyaki was held captive to be tortured by Orochi and by Higurashi for the crimes against the Kurozumi family, perhaps in an underground part of the castle next to his collection of Kokeshi dolls, and then was later able to escape just in time to learn that Orochi had a daughter, which he could then kidnap and mold his own way away from the Kurozumis. This would also involve taking the fruit, potentially as well, or if she was already fed the fruit, so be it. Now, why would he raise Tama in the first place? Well, that's the nature versus nurture argument. If he leaves her with Orochi, then she can be nurtured by the Kurozumi and become evil. Or find out that the Kurozumi to begin with are not bad by nature. Then that's something that Sukiyaki has to live with and internalize because he's responsible for the demise of the Kurozumi clan to begin with simply by being born. Why would Oda do this? Well, we've seen him do it a number of times before with Cobra, Riku, etc. He likes to redeem the fallen king, in this case the fallen shogun. If at the end of the day it is revealed that Tenguyama Hitetsu is Sukiyaki, and Kaido is no longer in power or Orochi, he can resume ruling Wano, and it doesn't have to be on Momonosuke's shoulders as a young boy to take over the land. He can actually travel with Luffy, if he so chooses, to continue learning about the poneglyphs and everything from Robin, or to just have an adventure like his father. Because then what you also have here is dramatic irony, where Oda has been setting up the friendship and the bond of both Momonosuke and Tama every step of the way. We see them, they are together, often sharing the same panel, to sort of put this idea in our head that they are a pair, 1 and 2. Because if Luffy is supposed to emulate Roger in every way, it's very possible that he'll pick up some cabin boys along the way like he did with Shanks and Buggy, and that Momonosuke and Tama will be his cabin boys. Now, why would that happen? Well, Tama's an orphan. She wants to become an enchanting kunoichi, and Ace promised to take her along one day. Luffy may feel like he has to honor that. There's also the identity thing with Ace, because even though Ace has been brought up several times, Luffy has never expressed his relationship with Ace. And that's on purpose. That's for emotional resonance. Either Yamato or Marco is going to reveal that to Tama, and it's going to be a very emotional moment for her. If Luffy was going to be the one to do it, I feel like he would have done it almost 100 chapters ago. It's going to happen at a pivotal moment. Now with Momonosuke, he needs to learn about the poneglyphs, and the only person to teach him that is Robin. The Kosuke family created the poneglyphs. Odin could read and write them. He was supposed to pass that on to Momonosuke. He can't do that anymore. Only Robin can. But, we have scenes with Otama and Momonosuke where they're buddy-buddy. One of the most poignant, if we can go back to this later on and look at this as if it were foreshadowed.
おい、タマ、無礼でござるぞ。拙者を誰と心得る。もうよい。
She's calling him Momo-kun, and he's telling her it's Lord Momonosuke. Get it right.
Savage.
I'm above you. And she's like, okay, Momo-kun, keeping them at the same level. When in reality, if she's Orochi's daughter, they both have claim to the throne. Despite Orochi's, malicious actions, he's still the shogun. She's the heir. He's the usurper. But here you have 2 children of 2 rival families being friends. No animosity between them at all. And that's going to be a very powerful moment if Momonosuke ever learns that she is the daughter of Orochi. Because they've been friends this whole time. And he's going to have to realize, oh, I can't judge her for Orochi's actions because she wasn't even raised by Orochi. There's nothing about Orochi in her. She's Tama. The same way that I am not Odin. I'm Momonosuke. Odin's my father, but I'm Momonosuke. That's a lesson that a lot of people have to learn in life. Sanji is learning that right now. And it's by no mistake that Sanji is the one that saves Momonosuke after he has finally embraced his own identity, where he's not cowering in fear at the thought of being Odin, but actually announces that he is Kosuke Momonosuke, and that he doesn't have to be just Odin's son. He is his own person. Sanji gives him a great job, and that's a big character moment for Sanji because he needs that. He needs to do that with the Vinsmoke name, probably by the end of the arc. Orochi is another character that doesn't really bind with this whole identity thing. There's someone that is completely aware of who they are, completely embracing it. But that's all surface level, because we know that Orochi got to where he is through deceit and lies. Even the teacher, Sarah Hebe, is teaching those children propaganda, telling them stories about what Orochi has done, but everything she's telling them are stories of Odin. Orochi has never done anything noteworthy to that level, but he still presents himself as this larger-than-life figure. Now, granted, sure, they're scared of Kaido, even though they, really puffed their chest out with that scene with CP0, saying that, hey, if you want smoke, come and get it because I got Kaido behind me. But anytime that he's hanging out with Kaido, he's intimidated. So I think that it's well within his rights to try and have had some sort of contingency plan. I do not believe that Orochi is dead. I believe that he will return, but he will not have his human head anymore. I think that he will have to replace it with one of his ugly snake heads as his base, and that'll be weird. We need some resolution with Orochi's story, and I think we're gonna get that. We're gonna get that interaction between Zoro and Orochi, definitely between Hiyori and Orochi, maybe even Momonosuke and Orochi. I think that would be fitting, and I think that that's what is owed to the audience and to everybody that is still alive in the Kosuke clan. I believe that Oda goes out of his way at any particular moment to show that Tama is the complete antithesis of Orochi, so that when we have this reveal that she is a Kurozumi, we can have that conversation about, was it right to go and slaughter all of the other Kurozumi? Did we create our own downfall? When she gets the Oshiruku, when she's in the tea house with Suru, she's polite. We'd never see Orochi doing that. Pretty much nobody in the Odin flashback had an identity crisis except for Orochi. Orochi was a snake, literally and figuratively. He was basically going undercover in the Kosuke family to take it over. Meanwhile, you had, Chad McGee, Kosuke Odin, he was full on who he was. One of the best versions of the identity theme within Wano is right at the beginning of the Odin flashback, where instead of showing us that Odin does or does not have an identity crisis, he utilizes the townspeople to tell us who Odin is. And everything they're saying are misinterpretations and lies. Whitebeard, no identity crisis. Roger, no. These people knew who they were. But Orochi was trying to figure that out, was trying to manipulate and create who he wanted to be. And in doing so, what he actually did was created the identity crisis for everybody that we see right now. One man's identity crisis created 30 others. And if it's true that he at one time possessed Tama's fruit, and planned to use it against Kaido in case he ever turned on him, then if it is actually used by Tama against Kaido, and does exactly what it's been foreshadowed to do, then, funny enough, Orochi will have, in hindsight, saved Wano. There's layers here. You have to put your tinfoil hat on and believe with me, but these are possibilities. This is a way to get out of this arc that I know a lot of people are going to be upset with, but that doesn't mean that I don't believe that Luffy and Kaido are going to fight. I believe that they're going to have a great second fight, potentially even a great third fight. I believe that Zoro will be involved. I believe that Zoro will be the one to reopen Odin's scar and to add a new line, because he uses Santoryu, not Nitoryu. But all I'm saying is that in a fight against two Yonko, strength alone may not cut it. And the story of Momotaro ends with Momotaro defeating the ruler of Onigashima. Whether Kaido is actually a dragon or he is a mythical Zoan. If we learn that this power works on Zoans, then Tama is going to tame Kaido at the end of the battle and tell him to leave forever or jump in the water or something, and then everybody is still going to have to focus on Big Mom, who, mark my words, is the bigger threat here.
このわしにかなうとでも思っているのか。大将は大きな金棒を振り回しました。しかし桃太郎も負けずに刀を振りかざします。なんと。どうか命だけはお助けください。もう人々を苦しめることはしないと誓うか。誓います。二度としません。本当だな。本当です。
Everything has been set up for Tama to be the MVP. There has been so much focus on her, so much focus on her power. We know that Momonosuke is able to control Zunisha. But what if Tama fed Zunisha a dango? Would she be able to break the curse? We know that devil fruits have been around for 800 years thanks to Toki. Could the person who gave Zunisha their initial order have been one of the original users of Tama's fruit? Another thing I was thinking about was the mountain god. It had an entire chapter dedicated to this boar in the Odin flashback. It would be almost inappropriate if it never came back, and it is a perfect ally for Tama to recruit. I don't know how else we're going to get out of this. I'm going to stop this here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Be sure to put them below. If you liked this, if this was something you found interesting, be sure to hit like. That allows more people to see the video, and they may like it as well. If you also enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe. I got a shiny new Discord. A lot of great conversations have been going on over there. Like I've been saying a lot, if you make it to the end of the video, you're a real one. So I appreciate you, and thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I've been swimming deep, deep. Savage.